people a more thorough understanding of the policy choices elected officials have made or are thinking of making, and how those policies will impact you, your family, and your livelihood. So tonight's presentation is being live streamed on our YouTube channel, on our Instagram and Facebook sites, and it is also being recorded and will be available for viewing on our website after JP does his magic and gets it up. Media was invited to attend the town hall tonight, and I do believe that some media is here, so that's great. We're happy to have you here as well. You are the Fourth Estate. You are there to actually enlighten people about public policy as well, and so hopefully that happens. Tonight's presentation, I mean, there's a lot of things to discuss in the state of Illinois, but tonight's presentation focuses on what is colloquially known as the SAFE-T Act. This controversial law was passed on January 13th, 2021, in the last hour of the last day possible for the 101st General Assembly to pass laws. In the Illinois Senate, it was literally passed in the dark of the night. The legislation, HB 3653, was one of 4 bills pushed during the lame duck session. A lame duck session follows the end of an election year, so in 2020, you got a brand new set of legislators coming in, so a lot of these legislators during the lame duck session are not showing up to be reinstated the next year, so they feel free to vote as they wish. Anyway, it was passed in the dark of the night in the Senate, and literally with an hour to go in the House before the new legislature got sworn in. So the bill had various measures that took effect at different times. The reason this legislation has become an explosive topic of discussion across the nation now is because the most controversial provision in the law that institutes cashless bail and creates non-detainable offenses is set to take effect in just a few months on January 1st, 2023. These provisions have public safety officials very concerned about their ability to keep dangerous criminals off the streets. So tonight is a time for the public to hear from experts and get their firsthand account perspective on the legislation. There's going to be no filter. You're going to hear straight from the practitioners. Each panelist was selected for their ability to inform the public on this matter. Each speaker will individually present information on crime and or this law. Following their individual presentations, we will have an audience question and answer period. I like to have the audience members ask questions directly. However, that usually ends in a 2-minute statement followed by a question that's multi-part. So instead, in order to get most questions answered, we passed out index cards for you to write your questions on. These will be collected near the end of the last speaker's comments and given to me to facilitate that Q&A. Now, also, while we're collecting up those cards, if you are an active duty public safety official, so you're a current police officer, sheriff deputy, if you're a mayor of a city, you get the first bite at the apple. You actually can come up here, and I want you to ask a question or share an experience that you think is important to inform this audience about what's going on the streets or in your communities. So you get the first crack at the questions as we collect up the cards and then come up with whatever. I mean, typically, you know, you have the same person, multiple people asking the same questions. So listen, I know all these gentlemen are very willing, though, to answer your questions afterwards if you're still in need of answers. Our first panelist is Matt Rosenberg. Matt's the author of What Next, Chicago? Notes of a Pissed Off Native Son. He is also a researcher and writer on crime and other issues for Wirepoints. I asked Matt to give the audience some information on crime and prosecution over the last few years from the research he has done. The statistics and trends are alarming, and while they are Chicago-centered, what I believe the other panelists will tell you is that crime is spilling into the suburbs, so the trends will be informative to all residents. The next 3 panelists are actual practitioners in public safety. You will hear directly from those who must daily enforce the act and are also charged with keeping the public safe. Each one has a unique role in enforcing the act. Each has a long career in public safety. They are the most qualified to present information to the public. I ask them to simply provide information on these items. 1, what are the trends and statistics on crime do you see in your duties over the last few years? 2, what changes on January 1st, 2023 in how you must do your job because of the Safety Act provisions? Number 3, does the act enhance or diminish public safety? As currently written. Number 4, can the act even be enforced? Do you have the manpower and the money to comply with the act? Following Matt Rosenberg will be Sheriff James Mendrick, DuPage County Sheriff, then Bob Berlin, DuPage County State's Attorney, and then Judge Dave Carlson, Will County Judge who oversees the criminal court in Will County. Our final panelist is my friend. I'm so honored to be able to call him friend, Pastor Corey Brooks. Pastor Brooks is the pastor of New Beginnings Church. Yeah. And he is the CEO of Project H.O.O.D. Pastor Brooks has spent every night on the rooftop of an abandoned hotel to raise money for his new community center to serve the people in his neighborhood. He is not done with that mission until October 29th, so I don't know if he's headed back to go sleep on the roof tonight, but he has a little bit of a respite right now. Pastor Brooks will provide his own perspective on crime and what needs to be done and whether or not the Safety Act helps or hurts the people that he serves. So let's get started with Matt Rosenberg. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jeannie. I come to you from a place in the future. It's called Cook County. I think many of you have ties there. Many of you probably once lived in Chicago. It's where I grew up. Bronzeville, South Shore, Hyde Park. Later lived on the north side. Jeannie has asked me to divide my brief presentation at the start into 4 parts. 1, what's in my book anyway? Why did I do it? Number 3, what do we do at Wirepoints, and can we share some data with you that shines a light on the dimensions of the problems that we are having with policing and prosecution and criminal courts? And we've got that for you. It's what we do. One of the things we do. Lastly, my own take on what to look for after January 1st. So let's dive right in. We've got a fantastic panel here, and I'd like to help set the stage. What's this book about anyway? It's a blend of policy diagnoses and prescriptions for Chicago with some shoe leather storytelling from the South Side. I moved into Bridgeport, and I started going down to places like Roseland and Englewood, Washington Heights, West Garfield Park. Key elements include fixing policing in the courts, fixing K-12 education, and while we're not here to talk about education at all tonight, really, I think almost all of us here would agree that fixing our public schools with real galloping, full-on school choice and vouchers is an essential piece of fixing this problem. And thanks to the US Supreme Court, that is now really almost certainly probably legal in Illinois, despite what our state constitution once said with its Blaine Amendment, which is more or less moot at this point. So we talk about courts, crime, policing, K-12 education, also the very rigged rules of governance in Chicago. That would make a fascinating forum for another time because there are so many corollaries at the state level, from gerrymandering to the way that finances are figured and calculated and finagled. But that's a whole nother thing. What else is in my book? There were some South Side rules, street wisdom about faith, family, finance, and persistence, things that I learned talking to people on the South Side. And there were some telling moments. The first of those came about 12 hours after I landed in Chicago and moved into my Bridgeport apartment. I went to see a certain pastor on the South Side named Reverend Corey Brooks. And to get to see him, I had to walk past the corner of 63rd and MLK. Now, I grew up about 1.5 miles east of there. This is not foreign territory for me. Here's what I saw. I saw an open-air drug market. I saw people walking around like zombies. It was scary. It wasn't pretty. I kept going. I got down to 66th and MLK, and I found some hope. There was a harvest party because it was Halloween Day. I recall this. And at the back of this empty lot, the same lot, Corey, where I think that great community and job training center is going to go, I saw the Reverend Brooks talking to a young man, a very large young man, a very intense young man, and he had a beef. They were getting into it. Later on, when I sat down to interview Corey, I asked him, what was that all about? And he said, well, this young fellow is in our job training program for the construction industry. And as you can see, Matt, he's African American. He's got a Latino boss who's giving him a hard time about not punching the time clock every day and about being on time. He's having a hard time dealing with this fellow. And I said to Reverend Corey, oh, wow, yeah, that sounds kind of interesting. So what'd you tell him? And Reverend Corey said to me, well, you know, I told him that these are the things that you have to deal with. So there's one little moment, but it reflects on something much greater that Reverend Brooks is doing and that other people are trying to do around Cook County and collar counties, and that is give young men and women the skills that they need to get ahead. This has a direct bearing on the problems that we have with crime, and it's part of the upfront piece of crime prevention. So that was one telling moment. Another telling moment was in Pullman, walking on 103rd Street, seeing a sign in a bar window that said, no one under 30 permitted inside. I don't have to explain that one, I don't think. It was sad. It was telling. I learned about the impressive turnaround in Pullman. Many of you know about what a great historic neighborhood that was, about the classic architecture, about its history, about the industrial prowess, and how it fell on hard times and eventually came back. Public-private capital, very, very important, interesting stuff. But then I went next door to Roseland, to Michigan Avenue, that same Michigan Avenue. And I walked that Michigan Avenue from 103rd to 115th Streets. Whew. I'm telling you, and where that left me was that human capital development is an essential part of economic development. So those were a few things. Why did I write the book? Moving on to my part B here. You know, I lived here for 30 years in Chicago. Now I'm back now. You can't get rid of me. In mid-2020, my old hometown was blowing up. So were other cities. Race was at center stage. There were toxic narratives that needed to be more closely examined. My theory is, and it's not an original one at all, as our signal cities go, so goes our nation. So in the end, I had to come back and dig in. The duality of Chicago is what really gets me. You know, it's fantastic, fascinating, and impressive in so many ways, yet it's also deeply dysfunctional and dangerous. I had a moment last September, right after I came back. I was down in Millennium Park, near the Pritzker Pavilion. And thank you, Pritzker family, for that great music facility. I'm gonna say it. Leave the politics out of it for a minute. I was at a blues concert. There was the beautiful skyline. It was a 70-degree night. There were 4,000 happy people on the lawn, and it was a great evening. It was the 50th birthday party for Alligator Records, great blues label. And a friend of mine afterward turned to me and said, look, Matt, it's doing pretty good, right? Wasn't this a great night? And I thought, yeah, this is fantastic. This is the best of the city. I wonder what the body count is this weekend. I wonder what the shooting count is. It turned out to be kind of average for the summer, about 54 shot, 9 dead. And it hit me, yeah, we've had worse. That's not so bad. And so I was left with the duality of the place. And we need to try and tip the scales a whole lot more in the direction of the good. and away from the direction of the bad. So with that in mind, what is it that we do at Wirepoints anyway? I'd like to hit on a few things. I think we're going to go to slide number 7 now. So let's just very, very quickly hit on some of the data pieces that we report on regularly at Wirepoints. Major crimes are up 23% this year. This is through week 41, last Sunday. This is according to the City of Chicago. Major crimes are up 23% versus 2019, and we choose 2019 for a reason. I know the Mayor Lightfoot likes 2021. It's always good to compare this year to almost the worst year ever. But that's not such a good idea. Major crimes up significantly. Murders up 30% versus 2019. Shooting incidents rather, up 34%. And motor vehicle thefts up a whopping 92%. Yeah, it's just not good out there, and I've talked to people about this, and I feel it myself. I stay in Evanston now. I go into Chicago all the time. What does it take now to walk on the street? You have to do risk assessment. You have to think about, should you be carrying? You have to think about all kinds of stuff. It's just absolutely nuts, really. The murder rate is vastly higher than Los Angeles or New York, and I want to put a fine point on this. Mayor Lightfoot and Police Chief David Brown have kept talking about how this year they're doing a little better than last year on murder. Well, you know, we should compare Chicago to LA and New York, and to mid-September, Chicago's murder rate is 18.4 per 100,000. By the end of the year, it'll be at about maybe 26 per 100,000. So right now, we're 18.4 murders per 100,000 population. New York City is 3.6. So our murder rate is about 5 times that of New York City. Now, how is that okay? You think that's just a one-off kind of comparison? Not so much, because LA is down there low with New York. LA is at 7.5 per 100,000. In the early 90s, Chicago, New York, and LA were all up there at about 30 murders per 100,000 by year's end. That's not a good citywide murder rate. And of course, all law enforcement professionals and a lot of reporters and a lot of you know it varies greatly neighborhood to neighborhood. You have neighborhoods in Chicago where the year-end murder rate is 90 per 100,000. That's just nuts. But in the early 90s, Chicago, New York, and LA were all about equal. They've improved dramatically. We haven't. We need to fix that. Going to slide 9. Let's talk about high-priority 911 calls that are put on, quote, backlog status. This was a big story for us. We got a whole bunch of data from the City of Chicago and a public records request. We found that last year, in 2021, more than 400,000 high-priority 911 calls were not answered. In other words, there were no police. We don't blame police for this. Things are crazy right now. They're out there writing up paperwork for positive community interactions. Well, that kind of thing is important. The paperwork gets in the way. A lot of things get in the way. Managerial decisions get in the way. The messages I get from Chicago cops and their spouses about what's going on, about the promotion policies, about the department politics, that's another book in and of itself. We won't even be able to go there tonight, but let me tell you, it's a highly politicized department. Things are all mixed up. So what sorts of crimes were languishing without police coming? How long did these 911 backlogs go on? Anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. We listened to the audio tape from the dispatchers. Not good, not good. What sorts of things? All sorts of things. There were 14,000 to 18,000 each of the following crimes not responded to in a timely manner because they were put on backlog status last year. Things like assaults in progress, batteries in progress, domestic batteries, person with a gun, and shots fired, not reported by ShotSpotter, the automated system, but reported by real people out in the community. Plus, there were some 1,300 people shot, no response, and 900 stabbed. So problems. Slide 11, carjackings. We're on track to hit a 22-year record high. 1,900 carjackings, 5 a day. This is one of the most terrifying crimes you can imagine. You've read all about it. You've seen the reports on the news. You know. You talk to the people who've lived through this, what that's like when you're in your own car, supposed to be a safe sanctuary, and someone shows up at the driver's side window pointing a gun at you. This is the end of days to me if we don't get a handle on this. Very big problem. Finally, some people aren't going to like this. Mass incarceration is actually a weaponized myth. The whole reason for the SAFE-T Act is a fraud. We looked at this. This data is straight from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the Department of Justice, the same Department of Justice that wrote the consent decree governing the actions and training and improvements required of Chicago police. What we find is that 0.5% of the adult population of Illinois is incarcerated. 0.5%. Break it down by race, it's a little bit different. For African Americans, it's 2%. For whites and Latinos, it's well less than 1%. And for Asians, that white adjacent minority, I think it's something like 0.04%. So that's something to really wrestle with. So those are a few of the things that we report on at Wirepoints. Finally, for my part here in this intro kickoff part, what happens January 1st? What's my take on what we're looking at here? So here are a few points that I'd like to share, and then I want to turn it over to our panel. Whether or not we see a wholesale release from county jails of detained pretrial cash bail suspects who are charged before January 1st remains to be seen. If there are no major legislative revisions to the relevant bill language by the first of the year, it could happen. But it also depends on how judges interpret the language on retroactivity. And I know this is a little wonky, but this is a big one. Does it apply to the guys already sitting in jail before a trial who can't make cash bond, or is it just apply to new charged suspects after January 1st? There are a lot of divergent opinions on that. And the worst case analysis, and something that state's attorneys and others fear, is it applies to the guys in there now if they haven't gone to trial, because if you look at the bill, it says cash bail is abolished. There are counter arguments to that, so I can't tell you how it's going to turn out. But this is kind of a big thing. There's also the question then of what is risk, right? If one person gets shot by a guy who's got serious prior convictions and who was not detained before trial, is that just a marginal externality, as political scientists would say? If the number of violent felonies by non-detained pretrial suspects grows to 10 per year in Madison County, let's say, or 50 per year in Cook County, is that acceptable? Is that negligible? I think many people would hesitate to say yes. Yet remember the words of that Milwaukee area state's attorney after the Waukesha horror, the domestic terrorism in that Christmas parade by a suspect who was out on cash bail when he should have been behind bars. It turned out that that state's attorney many years prior had said, yes, we know about bail reform. We know that it will cost innocent people their lives. He had said that back in 2007. So there's somebody in a seat of authority saying, yeah, it's negligible. Some people will die, or in Cook County, some people will die and some will get shot. But yeah, cost of doing business. I don't think so. If the Safety Act after January 1 is implemented with widespread release of charged suspects who'd been detained pretrial on high cash bail, and especially if the bill goes through with no change in the current language on when and how you can detain a charged suspect before trial, then we're headed for trouble. The experience in Cook County suggests we'll begin to see statewide more of the sorts of stories all too common now in Chicagoland, where it turns out that a recently charged suspect for armed robbery, carjacking, or shooting was incredibly out on low cash or no cash bail, awaiting trial, but yet was charged with another similar crime. A lot's going to depend on whether the willful flight and threat to a specific individual conditions in the bill's language are fixed, and our experts will weigh in on that, I'm sure. If those provisions are not fixed, we would be moving closer and closer to that lawless, anything goes, Mad Max, Wild West kind of environment. However, there's a mitigating force here. We've got 100 of the state's 102 states' attorneys who are opposed to this bill. They're concerned about the current cash bail provisions of the Safety Act, and there's a legal and political power structure in those 100 counties and a voting public that's very different from Cook County's. This means things might not turn out so bad if you step back and you consider that there's more to the entire criminal justice process, obviously, than just pretrial detention decisions and the cash bail question. There's decision to prosecute or not. There's also sentencing, right? Which is rather huge. So there's leverage in other areas. There's room to draw outside the lines. So, in conclusion, this law is big, no question. And there are a series of other issues with it that we won't really be discussing tonight, but which the public and police chiefs and sheriffs and prosecutors are very concerned about. In fact, we wrote about that today at Wirepoints. But I think in the end, what's really going on here in a roundabout way comes back to that last slide we showed, illustrating that 98% of the Illinois adult black population is not incarcerated. So if a guy with 2 or 3 prior felony convictions for weapons charges is booked on a similar new offense, there is no way he should not be detained until trial. Or do we really not care about gun laws after all? It sure looks that way all too often in Cook County. I conclude with this. The black scholar Shelby Steele, the author of the seminal book White Guilt, which I highly recommend, grew up in Harvey, Illinois, and he said it well in a December 2020 discussion forum about Chicago's challenges and the way we think and talk about the tricky stuff. He said, "We know white people are for real when they ask something of us. So it's time to stop making excuses for criminals of any color. It's time to stop making excuses for the state-documented and egregious failure of public schools in Illinois to teach K-12 students reading and math. If we insist that public policy is a positive force, then let's truly make it so. But this legislation, as currently written, is a grave step in the wrong direction." Thank you.
Hello, how is everybody tonight? Thank you so much for being here. It means so much. As elected official, I don't have an administrator to answer to. I have county board members that set my budget, but you know who my boss is? I'm here looking at him. You're my boss. I'm an elected official. I am unopposed this election cycle, so I am going to be around for a little over 4 more years. So thank you. And with that being said, that gives me no political motivation to be here. I am a Woodridge resident. I'm raising a family in DuPage County, just like a lot of you. And I'm worried about the implications of some laws that are going to change our lives drastically. So I'm going to start, for those that you don't know, a lot of people don't know what's the difference between a municipal police chief or a sheriff. What do I do? So I'm going to go with the overhead really quick first of what I do every day. So my first responsibility is I have the only correctional facility within DuPage County. So we get everybody's detainees. Whoever gets arrested comes to us in Wheaton. So with there, you know, when I came in the first day, I was told that all the detainees by law are considered my wards, which equates their care to that of my children. Everything from dental, medical, mental health, everything. So we took that seriously. You know, a long time ago, they closed down all the mental health institutions. They closed them down. And criminality ended up, you know, it's like water, pouring it, and it goes into a crack. Wherever life can go to get what it needs, it's going to do that. So we ended up being the benefactors for mental health services in a large array of sheriffs having correctional facilities. So we took that mantle on. I think we've done pretty good with it. We've done, so let me back up a second and go back. 80% of the people that we get are on substance. It's either heroin, fentanyl, alcohol, something. They're co-contributors with mental health issues, so we have that to deal with too. So we do full drug recovery, drug detox, medicated assisted treatment. That takes about 30 days just to peel off the addiction well enough to find out which mental health malady is. We can't do a proper diagnosis for probably at least 30 days. Once we do that, we have a full psychiatric staff. We have every type of medical provider that you can imagine. Once we get you stabilized, we start with 60 classes per week available to you. We are graduating perpetually, about 40 people doing their GEDs. Job training, sanitation. We started sanitation. I am a religious man. I'm going to say I do a lot of things as God, I believe, tells me to. We started thank you. We started the sanitation certification services 2 months before COVID and didn't get COVID in our jail as an outbreak until Omicron. Sometimes you do the right thing and the right thing happens, but so sanitation service, horticulture, College of DuPage teaches horticulture, indoor and outdoor. That's a life skill. That's teaching a person to fish. That's something that they can actually use in the real world or get employment. Gang desistance programs. We take off gang tattoos and get people out of gangs. When they take the tattoos off, that's their actual rank. They can never go back, ever. That's it. So we certified them in truck driving, and they make $52 grand a year full benefits. And we are siphoning out the gangbangers out of Chicago. Thank you. These have led to all-time high recidivism drop rates that we've ever seen. Our heroin level forever was 90%. Now we're looking at 18%. Criminality, 75 to 15. It's jobs. You get people hooked into jobs, they stop screwing up. It's really that simple. I can't really make it any more complex than that. If you give somebody hope and purpose, show them there's a different way, different life, you can make it, and it will change. We're doing all of that. We have reentry, where we actually keep, we start with Suits for Success. We give 3 suits when you go through the programs. When you're doing your job programs, you look sharp. And then we have reentry programs where we keep attached to a lot of these people for up to 2 years to make sure all those resources and training classes don't go to waste. And we're having great success, but what I'm worried about with the Safety Act, that could stop for us. So instead of doing all of these services that I just explained, it would be build a bond court into my police station, staff it every day on your dime. That's about another 112 days a year I have to staff a bond court because that's weekends and holidays also, can't hold anybody, period. And then cycle them out, and while they're still high, they'll be released instead of treated. That's the alternative. That's what the Safety Act, that's what no cash bail, that's what it means when I can't have anybody in my facility. I lose that access for intervention. I've been begging since the beginning of all this, just at least put in something there where you can remand them if the correctional facility offers psych and detoxification processes. I can't even get that far with. Nobody listens to me. I don't know if it's because I'm a cop. They don't think I'm educated enough. I'm not a subject matter expert, which baffles me. I think the only ones that work on this are non-cop subject matter experts. I mean, they brought one into the county board earlier this week to talk about the Safety Act. Not a lick of law enforcement, anything, but she's going to tell us, the police, what implications the Safety Act is going to have. That's almost comical. So, that's our correctional side of it. But now you have this thing called, B and C misdemeanors. So, okay, I'm going to start with this. Everyone keeps saying it's not true. That's my crazy button, because you just can't say something's not true and put your fingers in yours and pretend it's going to go away. I mean, and that's been the philosophy. Let's call them racist. Let's call them fearmongers. But let's talk about written rules. So when I take my policy, we don't make these things on the day before we, start the year, right? We make our policies and procedures at the DuPage County Sheriff's Office well before they go into effect, because we have to train on them. This is the policy that says the deputy shall issue a citation. Now, shall is the most compelling legal word you can have. Shall means not may, not can, means you have to. You have no choice. Citation means non-custodial. So that means I can't arrest you. If I touch you after shall issue citation, I'm violating your Fourth Amendment. That's seizure. I've seized you. You can sue me now. And in tandem with that, they made anonymous complaints against police at start, too. We used to at least get to phase our accusers, and they'd actually have to write in a document that the cop did this, the cop did that. Now, if you break up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you can just call and do complaints, and that person's going to be investigated from here to eternity for nothing they ever did, and you can do it anonymously, just to mess with us. Anybody who gets arrested will be doing that. And then even if you don't get convicted on any of these things, oh, do you know, look, Your Honor, this cop's been investigated 30 times for blah, 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 blah. So that's how badly you could ruin somebody's career just by having a rule like that. That's causing me to have 30 less cops. They're all leaving, retiring. I used to get 500 people at a testing process. I'm lucky to get 50. And out of 50, I get 15 viable. Other departments are getting 1 or 10 people at a testing process. You're going to have 20 to 25% less cops within 3 years. That's just going to happen. We're stealing all the people from Chicago. You were talking about the Chicago cops and how demoralized? Yeah, we're getting them because they love it out here. They love you guys. I'm telling you, they're working. They're great cops. But lateral transfers, as we call them, where we take from other agencies, can only last so long before we cannibalize everybody who's planning on moving. And then it's what you have. And we're reaching what you have right now. And it's going to be really tough. And even though I got to do the pitch now because we are that desperate, download our app, DuPage County Sheriff Office. All our jobs are right there. I made them so easy to apply for. And I wish I was joking, but I'm dead serious. We need people so bad, especially females. So we're going through these problems. Now take Class B misdemeanors. Class B misdemeanor is like trespass, criminal damage of property. I mean, of course, having all these big crimes out is going to be a problem. But, again, I'm a policeman. I started 26 years ago. I'm the guy driving the car, and I look at my whole job of what's the guy driving the squad car to the call for service going to need. And right now, looking at what we're going to have to do with, like, say, a trespass. Say somebody was in here ridiculing us, okay? We would be able to come, write a citation. A ticket shall issue citation. Remember those words? And I can't touch them. So shall issue citation, and then we leave. Now an agent of this organization here at the Abington will have to either, through their own staff, apply whatever force they, now words that we've had to live by forever, apply the necessary amount of force to safely remove the person from the premises. So, and they'll be judged by reasonable man theory of did you use the appropriate amount of force, was somebody about to get hurt or going to hurt you, and you could justify that. So that's your alternative. You have your staff. Now, do you train your staff in this? Are you going to have a touch and a no-touch policy? I mean, Oakbrook Mall, they have a no-touch. They can't touch. They follow you around and call the police. But if you go to some of these individual stores, they've got somebody armed to the hilt. That's security. They're contracting out their security. And hey, all you business owners, all that, FY23 budget's coming pretty quick. I would recommend security cameras of some sort. Whatever happens, you want to catch it on tape. You want an accurate accounting of what happened. And then secondly, you have to make that determination. Am I going to train my staff to do a use of force? Am I going to have touch policies? Am I going to have intermediate weapons like tasers, pepper spray, guns? That's insurance riders you need for all that. And then if you franchise it out to a contractor, it'll take away a lot of those liabilities, but it's going to cost a lot more. Those guys aren't cheap that are going to stand there fully armed, ready to be doing a use of force. So these are options. Now, your homes. Let's go there because everybody asks these questions. Yes, if somebody's swimming in your swimming pool or put a tent on your front lawn, I can write a citation and leave them. And then you have the same choice, those bar owners, restaurant owners, Binny's owners, supermarkets, you're going to have the same problem. We're going to write the ticket, we're going to walk away. That's all we can do. Shall issue citation, non-custodial, or I get sued. So we walk away, leave the, the citation poolside or in the garage or wherever this person's tent is on your property. We leave. That's up to you as a citizen to determine what use of force am I going to use to get this person off my property. And that's not somebody breaking in, because that's a home invasion or a burglary. Or I will say, don't invite that uncle that gets out of hand at the party on New Year's Eve, because that's going to be the one we can't get rid of. Somebody you invited in but becomes unruly. And think about this. So you have, okay, you're not going to keep people in the jail. You're going to possibly let some go. You're not going to be able to arrest for trespass. It's at the middle of winter, and it's going to happen when the corks pop on New Year's Eve. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, come on. This is like almost like it's divine force multipliers. It's almost like it was designed to do this. I don't understand. As a policeman, this drives me crazy, because this seems like bottled chaos just being unleashed on us. It makes no sense to do this, and it's only going to harm. Do any of you guys really want to have to figure out how you're going to drag somebody off your front lawn? No. And let me ask you another question, because this is a Chicago bill signed by our wonderful governor. Do any of you think that we will benefit by absorbing the attributes and being more like Chicago out here in DuPage? No. Never heard that answered any differently. Now, maybe Chicago could learn from us and absorb some of our attributes and be more like us. That would be a more rational world. So basically, what I would just want to get across is that it's not just the big things. It's the routine, little things, the way of life that you're living now is going to be different. And, I have to say, be suspicious of all things secret. I brought this up a year and a half ago as sheriff of DuPage County, as your elected sheriff. You guys wanted me to do this, and I did it. I went and tried to warn them about all the harms that were going to come a year and a half ago with 3653. That was before they changed it from 163, because they didn't like witness slips. But when I brought it up on the county board floor, county board member Liz Chaplin raised her hand and said, "I wish to table this topic indefinitely." So move, second, vote, long party lines, boom. So why, if this is such a great thing, do you want it to remain secret until the last minute? And now it's like, hey, maybe it needs some tweaking. No, it's a lie. Well, maybe we need to change some stuff. No, it's a lie. They can't make up their minds and pivot which way they want to go with this now, because it's a hot mess. And unfortunately, what breaks my heart, and this is what I'm going to conclude with, it breaks my heart that I had to, in my job, 26-year cop, I raised my hand and swore an oath to protect all of you and put my life in front of any danger that comes to you, and they're taking a portion of that responsibility away from me and putting it right onto you guys, and that is wrong. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you so much for being here, and I want to really say that the reason with all this crazy stuff goes on, because I had brown hair 3 years ago, just so you know. This is stressful. But, I do this job for all the people like you. You know what? When I come here and I see people like you and they support law enforcement, that's what drives me and the rest of us to keep going. It's people like you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff Mendrick. I'm Bob Berlin, your DuPage County State's Attorney. Thank you. So, like Jim, I'm an elected official, and I answer to all of you. You are my boss. I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been a prosecutor my entire professional career, and I do it because I'm passionate about it. I love it. I care about it, and what we do makes a difference. But what happens in Springfield has a huge impact on how we are able to do our job, how the sheriff and how the police are able to do their jobs, because as prosecutors, we can't do our jobs if we don't have the police to bring us the cases and the evidence. So let me just start by saying this. There are a couple of good things in the Safety Act that have already gone into effect. They were unfunded mandates. But body cameras is really a tremendous, tremendous tool for the public and for the police. They make our cases a lot stronger. They protect the police. They protect the public. The problem was when they instituted the law, there was no money for it. So the county has had to spend millions of dollars, not just for the cameras and the storage, but the additional personnel, both for my office and the public defender's office, because there are hours and hours of body camera video, and we have to watch all of it. As we're all sitting here tonight, I can tell you there are many attorneys in my office who are in the office right now watching body camera videos, preparing for their cases. So we've had to hire a total of 18 attorneys over last year and now in the upcoming year, in addition to some additional support staff. That's a tremendous cost. As a result, they're having to reconfigure the entire floor in the judicial annex where our office is. The public defenders are moving up to the 3rd floor, and there will be no more room to expand in the future. We're going to need a new building. So let's talk about the Pretrial Fairness Act, what's going into effect January 1st. Right now, we have a system of cash bond. Cash bond serves 2 purposes. Bonds are set to assure that defendants show up in court as required, but they're also set to protect the community. And the Illinois Supreme Court has held that people have a right to bail, but the public has a right to be kept safe. And the right to bail has to be balanced against the right of the public to be safe, right? It makes sense. In February of 2020, the former Attorney General of New Jersey and a former federal prosecutor in New Jersey wrote an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune when there was talk of Illinois eliminating cash bail. And they urged the Illinois General Assembly and the governor to follow the New Jersey model. New Jersey eliminated cash bail in 2017, but when New Jersey did that, they put in a strong preventive detention statute that gives judges discretion in every criminal case to detain a defendant if they're a threat to the community or a person, if they're likely to intimidate witnesses or jurors, if they're likely to obstruct justice, or if they're likely to flee or not show up in court. That system in New Jersey, if you talk to judges, if you talk to defense attorneys, and you talk to their prosecutors, has worked extremely well. The violent criminals are being detained without the ability to post bond, and those who are nonviolent and not a threat and who will show up in court get released. The number of people in their jails decreased, but the crime did not go up in New Jersey. So what did Illinois do? They passed the Safety Act, which is modeled after New York's law. New York has a law that takes away judicial discretion. Judges in New York, for most crimes, can only detain people if they're unlikely to show up in court, if they're a flight risk. They cannot consider the person's risk to the community or their dangerousness. And the problem with Illinois' law is, for most crimes, that's the law that we have here in the Safety Act. Let me talk about it a little bit. We hear about detainable and non-detainable offenses. So for crimes such as robbery, burglary, arson, kidnapping, hate crimes, aggravated batteries, these are violent offenses, but these are offenses for which you can receive probation under Illinois law. Because of that, judges after January 1st will not be able to consider somebody's risk to reoffend or their risk to the community, their dangerousness. And the only way they can detain defendants charged with those offenses is if they find they are a willful flight risk. And there's a definition in the Safety Act of what willful flight risk means. It means planning or attempting to intentionally conceal yourself in order to evade prosecution. So in order to detain people charged with those crimes, we are going to have to show that they have a plane ticket to flee the jurisdiction, or they made a statement to the police, if I get out, just so you know, I'm taking off.
They don't do that.
And the reality is, if you looked at the 500 or so defendants that are in the DuPage County Jail right now, those that are detained pretrial, I would venture to say that probably 97 or 98% or more are detained because they are a risk to the community, not because they're a flight risk. So the law takes judges' discretion away in those cases. Now, for murders, carjackings, armed robberies, almost all of your sex offenses, including sexual assaults, judges will be able to detain those defendants. But there are different standards in the law, and they conflict with one another. So for forcible felonies, by which, if you're convicted, where there has to be a prison sentence, a judge can detain someone if they're a threat to the community. So for those cases, murders, rapes, carjackings, armed robberies. However, on every court date thereafter, the law says in order to continue detention, a judge has to find that they are a real and present threat to a person or persons. That community standard is no longer there. Cases get continued typically every 30 days the case is up. So under the reading of the law, someone may be detained on the first court date, but if they're not a threat to a person or persons, they're going to have to be released 30 days later. Now, what does person or persons mean? Right now, the law, our bail statute includes the phrase person or persons, and there is a definition in the current law that says person or persons includes a threat to the community. That section of the law has been repealed. It's deleted. It's not in the Safety Act. So person or persons does not mean community. Now, in a domestic violence case, it's going to be easy for us to show someone's a threat to a person or persons. In domestic violence cases, the law is actually very strong. It's a strong preventive detention statute. But when it comes to other violent offenses, it is not. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is people right now who are detained on $1 million or $2 million or $5 million bonds or no bond, they will not be able to be detained after January 1st. For gun crimes, certain gun offenses, unlawful use of a weapon by a felon or armed habitual criminal, and Matt Rosenberg talked about this. These are career criminals who have no right to possess a gun legally, but they're possessing a gun. In order to detain those defendants, there's a different standard. We have to show that they are a threat to a specific named individual. So the person who's carrying a gun illegally, who is that person that we are going to allege? And we have to prove that by clear and convincing evidence. What happens when more violent criminals get out? We know what happens. People reoffend, and the public suffers. What we don't hear talked about in Springfield, and what I've been talking about for years, is the social cost of crime. And we know it costs $30,000 or $40,000 to incarcerate somebody in the Illinois Department of Corrections. But what's the cost to society when there's a murder or a carjacking? You can't put a dollar value on what that does to communities. When there's a house on your block that gets burglarized, what does that do to the entire community? The fear that it strikes in people. When people can't sleep at night, or when people feel like they have to go get alarms, or they have to sleep with a loaded gun in their nightstand. You can't put a dollar value on that. And that is the social cost of crime, and it's real. And people are genuinely afraid. You're here, all of you are here because you care. And you should care. We all care about public safety. People live in DuPage County for two main reasons, right? We have great schools and we have safe communities. And those are both at risk with this law, because you can't have great schools if we don't have safe communities. So, you know, there are many who have called us fearmongers. This is not fearmongering. This is what's actually in the law, and it's real. There's a couple other things I want to talk about in this law. Right now, when somebody doesn't show up in court, a judge has the ability to issue a warrant. Under the new law, under the Safety Act, somebody doesn't show up in court, all a judge can do is issue a summons to appear. That's just a notice to appear. It doesn't go in what's known as the LEADS system, the police computer database. So if somebody gets pulled over on a traffic stop right now, the police run their name, they're going to see there's a warrant for the person's arrest, and they can arrest them. Summonses will not go in that system. If they don't show up on the date of their summons, then a judge can issue a warrant. Now, almost half of our felonies are committed by people that don't live in the county, many coming from Cook County. Our suburban police officers are not going to be going into Chicago or other places to try and serve a summons. They don't have the manpower, and frankly, it's dangerous without having the power of a warrant. One of the other aspects of the law is there will be greater use of electronic monitoring for those that are out on bail. Those on electronic monitoring will get day-for-day credit off of their sentence, and at least 2 days a week, they will be allowed to run personal errands for personal necessities, and they still get credit off their sentence. But if they cut their monitor off or they take off, we cannot charge them with escape unless they are in violation for at least 48 hours. This is in the new law. So it is extremely concerning. It's extremely disturbing what is going to come January 1st. We are going to have to staff a brand new courtroom, a detention courtroom with attorneys, because we're going to be doing hearings all day long. Because the law says in order to detain someone, you have to immediately do a detention hearing. Now, for some of the for many of the smaller counties downstate, they only have court 1 day a week. So people will be detained for 6 days before they have their hearing. But here in DuPage County, we have court every day of the week. So it's going to result in additional staffing both on the state's attorney's end and the public defender's end. And again, there was no funding for this in the law, so that's taxpayer money. One final part about the law is this. What happens when you dry up cash bail is that right now, when defendants post bond and they're found guilty, when restitution is ordered to victims, that money comes out of bond money. And victims of crime will not receive that restitution out of bond money. So, look, the elimination in theory, the elimination of cash bail, if you do it like New Jersey, it's not a terrible thing. It actually makes sense. We have cases now, serious cases, where bond may be set at $2 million or $3 million, and defendants, some of them actually post that money and they get out. So with a strong preventive detention statute, those defendants will be detained. But New Jersey has it, New York doesn't, and our law, the Pretrial Fairness Act and the Safety Act, is much more like New York. So that's what we're looking at come January 1st, unless the law is changed. I am still hopeful that something's going to happen in the veto session, but as Jeannie knows from being in Springfield many years, nothing is ever easy in Springfield. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for paying attention.
Sorry, I don't know if everyone can hear me. My name is Dave Carlson. I am the presiding judge of the felony division in Will County. Before we get started, I would just like to say thank you for having us. Jeannie, thank you for including us. For those of you here in DuPage County who don't realize, about a year ago, they remapped the Supreme Court districts, and we used to be just neighbors. Now we are actually all part of the same Supreme Court district, and we as Will County residents used to consider ourselves as downstaters to a certain extent. Well, welcome. With that being said, I'd also like to thank some of the Will County people who have come here tonight. We have court reporters, we have probation officers, we have a Joliet City Councilman who is a retired policeman who sponsored a resolution in the Joliet City Council to condemn the Safety Act. With that, I have to stop with any sort of political comment. First and foremost, I guess I'll make a disclaimer. There's so much I want to say, so much that has been said here right now that I have so many personal feelings on. But as a judge, we're ruled or we're controlled by what they call the canon of judicial conduct, and the rules prohibit me from talking about any case that may be in front of me and or any case that may be in front of another judge. And as we all know, the Safety Act itself is currently under review, particularly in Will County, but also in other places. So with that, I will keep my my remarks kind of limited as the administrative side of my duties, which as the presiding judge of the felony division has 9 judges and about 2,500 felony cases a year, every year, which, and I think, Bob, we were talking about before, I think we're pretty close as far as with DuPage County as far as the number of cases that are charged. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I suppose that's what we should do, just so you know where I'm coming from on this, so you don't think I'm a complete lunatic for either answering or some of my opinions on this. Back in 1994, I started as an adult probation officer in Cook County. I was an armed probation officer in Cook County. Some of the probation officers carried guns. And we worked nights, we worked midnights in every area. Matt, you were going through some of the neighborhoods. I know Pastor Brooks, we talked about it before. It's funny because I have been in every one of those places and used to spend nights upon nights. Oh, sorry, Raquel. Oh, is that better? Nobody has ever told me that I'm quiet. So with that, I started that, and that was 4 years, and I probably had the single greatest education in my life, dealing with people. And for those of you, and I would like to honor anybody who's in law enforcement right now. For those of you who have ever done it, one of the premises of this Safety Act is that in some way, shape, or form, the police, the court system, the state's attorneys, the judges, we don't get it. And that some way, somehow, that the legislators know more than we do. So those of you in law enforcement right now, I just want to say thank you. I also want to express the feeling that I have as a judge now, that nobody knows the feeling of putting someone in handcuffs, taking their liberty. As Americans, it is the single most cherished thing we have is our liberty, our freedom. And what this does, when you take someone's freedom away from you, should change you as a human being, and it does. That being said, after that, then I went to law school, and here I am as a lawyer and as a judge. 2013, I was a prosecutor in Will County. I was the gang crimes prosecutor there. I was appointed as a associate judge in 2013, and in 2014, I ran for judge, and I was elected as a circuit judge. About 4 years ago, I became the head of the felony division, and there's so much I had that I wanted to say, and I started taking notes listening to everybody up here, because I think it's something that has to be commented on. I can speak anecdotally, I think, on the things that I see, that we see up here, and I can tell you, and I think to a person, first and foremost, the world has changed. Just in the last 2 or 3 years, whether it's through crime, whether it's through the people that appear in front of us, whether it's through just the complete level of disrespect for authority, we are seeing it on a daily basis. I can tell you, just yesterday, I had a guy standing in front of me in my courtroom who dropped his pants, just standing there with no pants on. Didn't seem to think that was a big deal. Kind of wanted to show me what he thought he was, I guess. That being said, we as judges, as prosecutors, as the sheriff, our hands to a certain extent have become tied because of social pressures, because of certain things that are being presented to us as officials in the criminal justice system. We no longer have some of the abilities that we should have. I will go straight to the idea of the Safety Act and what it does as it relates to judges without commenting on it, whether it's good or bad. I think one of the things that Bob just hit on was the failure to appear. It completely eviscerates the ability of a judge to administer justice. Think about how many people that obviously don't care to follow the law to begin with are going to come to court if you say, hey, do me a favor, come back. And when you don't come back, I'm going to send a policeman out there, risk their lives, and tell them, hey, come back. I mean, I don't know what was going through people's minds. You know, one of the things that is, as lawyers we used to do, and I'm sure Bob has used this in closing arguments in front of a jury, and that is you tell the jurors, you say, hey, listen, take the facts, take the evidence, apply those, but do not leave your common sense and experience of everyday life outside of those doors. It's something that almost every trial lawyer, I think, has used. And think about it. It makes perfectly good sense. We are unfortunately at a spot in our history where we are eliminating common sense and experience of everyday life. One of the things as far as talking about this, and I cleared this with Pastor Brooks, I always joke because you don't hear from judges oftentimes. Because as I said, we have these canons that we're controlled by, that we're supposed to be quite silent about most things. And we can't get into politics, and we can't, or we can't speak of politics if we're not running for office, and we can't talk about the cases, like I said. But we are the third branch of government. And I think sometimes it's incumbent upon us as judges to get out and let you see us. I talk to the jurors when they come in and get sworn in, and I talk to the grand jurors when they come in and get sworn in. I tell everybody, I said, here's my invitation to you. Come see what happens in the courthouse. Because we are the third branch of government. And this is where as I said, Pastor Brooks, you know, I always say the judiciary is kind of like the Holy Spirit in the Holy Trinity. You know, you got the Father, you got the Son, you kind of get what that's all about. And then you say, what's the Holy Spirit? Well, they're kind of everywhere. We don't really know, but they participate in all these decision-making events and issues. And like I said, as it relates to this particular act, what really comes down to is there are going to be judges making decisions on this. At the end of the day, the judges, just like the state's attorney, just like the sheriff, just like your legislature, and just like the governor and those in the executive branch, answer to you. You know, I tell people that do grand jury service in Will County, I give them the same speech, and they usually look at me and roll their eyes. But I tell them the speech about how we are descendants of knights in England. Okay, all right, we know the Queen just passed, we have a new king, or they have a new king. We fought that, but for some reason we still are enthralled by the monarchy. But a learning lesson from this whole thing is that about 1,000 or more years ago, there was this court called the Court of the Grand Assize. And what that was that, well, I think there were probably, well, we use 16 here in Illinois. We'll just use it at that. 16 knights got together and said, hey, you know what, here's an idea. Before one of us gets our head lopped off by the king because he just doesn't like us, but he makes up some sort of a trumped up charge, why don't we get together and say, hey, the Crown has to tell us what the evidence is to show that they committed a crime before we'll let them prosecute them and then lop off their head. And that is the foundation of our society, of our legal system to a certain extent. And what's the basic that still lasts till today? It's that we believe the government answers to us, the people. When Mr. Berlin, as state's attorney of DuPage County, says, I want to charge someone with a felony, when he says that, he has to go before people that are neighbors, They've never talked to each other before. They'll never talk to each other again. But they sit and decide the fate of whoever it is that Mr. Berlin's talking about. And once again, it's our very basic beliefs that we trust you. We work for you. Couple last things, and I'll pass it on to Pastor Brooks. You know, and these are things that I wrote down. And sorry, I can't see very well. There are people in our county jails that shouldn't be there. And I take kind of, and I shouldn't say this, I know it's been recorded, and I guarantee by tomorrow morning my chief judge will be talking to me saying I shouldn't have done this. And then I probably will be talking to someone else, having a lawyer take me down to the Judicial Inquiry Board, whatever it is. That being said, there are people in our county jails that don't deserve to be there. And it was hit on by the sheriff, and it was hit on by the state's attorney. Those are the people that have been found mentally ill. They're waiting to be made fit, waiting to be treated. And the problem is, our state won't take them. We legally, by statute, have to transfer them to the Department of Human Services. It doesn't happen. It simply doesn't happen. They say they're full. They say they don't have room. And so what happens? We now have mentally ill people sitting in our county jail. Sheriff Mendrick here has to deal with it. They have people who need help, who are getting into fights, getting new charges, breaking things, doing things that cause nothing but more trouble. So don't tell us that we have people in the jail that shouldn't be there when they're leaving the people that shouldn't be there. As far as bond issues, you know what? It's part of the job. Judges accept that responsibility. You know, it's the mechanism that the state's attorney was talking about regarding the New Jersey plan or how they do it there. That is an outstanding system. We have made major changes in how we deal with criminals. I can tell you right now, who here knows that on a nonviolent offender, starting about 3 or 4 years ago, they get $30 a day off of their bond. So that means the vast majority of the people in our county jails are released with credit that they never have to pay. That's happening right now. So a retail thief, someone who goes into, I was going to say Dominic's, that shows you how old I am, I guess. But Jewel or Mariano's, yes, Mariano's. They now are sitting, they're being released. They're not sitting in jail, contrary to what the world wants you to believe. And when I say the world, I'm using that in quotes. Finally, I'll leave you with two last things. In all of our trainings that we've had, when the reality set in that this was going to be implemented, the judiciary, state agencies, we're all, as judges, we're state employees, and we have to participate in these biannual training, 30 hours, whatever it is. And one of the sessions was about this new law. And one of the things about the new law that was most interesting to me was that corporate speak became part of the lingo in criminal justice issues. They started talking about stakeholders. You know, I know when we started, it used to be defendants, victims. Now we talk about stakeholders. And you know who the stakeholders are? They're members of the community that are concerned, but not for safety. They can be, well, this is where I have to stop. I will leave you with this. About, and I think, Bob, you were probably a part of this. Back in 2003 or 2004, the state legislature, and I think a whole bunch of people said, hey, we need to really look at the criminal code in the state of Illinois. It was kind of like a garage and a house that you just jam stuff in and you never take it out. You never throw it out. So every year, the criminal code, which is still a book, and you'll notice the old guys like me still have papers and things like that, not these fancy computers. But you would have stuff jammed in this book, and they would make new laws on top of old laws, and they never changed it, and they just kept building it, building it, building it. And finally, someone said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. We gotta clean this up." So they set up a commission. It was called CLEAR, and I think it was criminal law, something, whatever it was. Yeah. And guess how long it took CLEAR to go through the criminal code? About 8 or 9 years to clean up our criminal laws. How long did it take them to come up with the Safety Act? With that, I better stop.
First of all, let me say to Jeannie and Babette, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Let's give a hand of applause to these gentlemen who have done such a marvelous job. Excuse me, I'm a little stuffy. That's what staying on a roof will do to you when the weather changes. So, after I received the invitation from Jeannie and Babette, quite a few doors opened for me to talk about the Safety Act, and I was thankful for that. I've had an opportunity to speak on Fox. I've had an opportunity to write a couple of op-eds. And just yesterday, I was asked to write an op-ed for a national publication on this very issue. And it's due tonight at midnight. But that's okay, because it gave me a chance to finish it on the way here. And secondly, it gives me a chance to practice on you to see if it's any good. Give me a little time if I need to make some changes. So if it's not any good, after I read some of the excerpts from it, please feel free to tell me that was garbage, and I'll make some changes. But I want to share some of these thoughts with you. This is what I've written for this national op-ed on the Safety Act. Sometimes I feel the need to state the obvious truth these days. We are all American citizens. Yeah. We are all entitled to the same rights and protections no matter where we live and the color of our skin. However, on the south side of Chicago, where I live and minister, it hasn't felt that way. In the last 2 years since George Floyd was murdered, we've had Black Lives Matter movement, we've had Defund the Police movement, we've had DEI, which is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion movement, and we've also had what I call the great distantly of upward mobility movement as we remove ACT and SAT tests and strip schools of honor classes and waste valuable time on white privilege instead of educating our kids upward. We are literally drowning in race these days. Not one of these elites pushing these movements in the name of helping blacks have ever visited my neighborhood to ask what we think. It's almost like we have no say, that we're some sort of social experiment, or that we are pawns without minds of our own. That is why when I heard that the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, was championing the Safety Act, and I'm not an elected official, so I can be political tonight. That is why when I heard that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker was championing the Safety Act, which will abolish the cash bail system, I couldn't help but see it as an insult. The governor claims that his plan will prevent minorities from being disproportionately impacted. He believes that this will make our city safer and more equitable. Sounds like a nice, sweet sentiment, doesn't it? But what about the minorities in my neighborhood who suffer some of the worst violence in America? Don't we matter? However, this Democratic governor who descends from one of America's richest families will never have to see the realities of his actions on the ground. My community will, however. It is unfortunate, but thanks to decades of failed liberal policies, many of our impoverished, abysmally educated youth resort to violence. And when they do, they are preying on us American citizens who are just trying to live our lives and make the world a better place. One of those people is my friend Carol Clodo, who works at my non-profit community center, Project H.O.O.D, helping others obtain destiny. She was recently carjacked and had the gun pointed at her face. She truly feared for her life because mercy is on a short supply these days in my neighborhood. She said, "I felt violated and helpless," Carol told me. "The police were called 5 times and never showed up, which made me feel as if I didn't matter. I can't even imagine the person who did this not being held accountable for their actions and being let out just to do what they did to me to someone else." Where's Governor Pritzker's actions to protect Carol and countless others who are overcoming incredible odds for their shot at the American dream? He knows what we have had: over 500 murders so far this year, over 1,500 cases of sexual assault, over 6,400 robberies, over 15,000 thefts, and 13,000 car thefts, and on and on. And this solution is to make things more equitable for criminals who happen to be minorities. Well, down here, we don't see them as minorities. We see them for what they are: criminals who must be removed from our neighborhood so that we may have peace, so that we can have peace to go to the store, go to school, or church. I say all of these things as someone who believes in rehabilitation with all of my heart. For the last 10 years or so, Project H.O.O.D has been rehabbing citizens fresh out of prison. Our neighborhood receives more than half of the prisoners released in Chicago every year, and we strive to meet them all and offer them pathways to the American dream. I recently asked my new friend Pierre Blackney what he thought of the governor's new plan, the Safety Act. Pierre was recently released from prison and is working at our community center to prevent youngsters from following his path. He said, "I ended up in prison for making bad choices. I was trying to make fast and easy money to provide for my family, so I sold drugs, and to protect myself, I carried a weapon." Pierre went on to say that the thought of free bail sounds real good from the criminal mindset, because anything short of murder or treason, I know I'll be let back out on the streets without having to post bail. It will only lead me to committing more crimes because I haven't learned my lesson from the first crime. There was no accountability nor any jail time for me to reflect upon my actions. What Pierre did not mention was that his victims were mostly minorities, the very ones that our governor's ignoring completely. The governor has also ignored my efforts to build a massive community center so we can scale up our efforts to build safe space where we can prevent future Pierres from going down the wrong path, as well as prevent future victims of crime like Carol. For the last year, I've been living on the rooftop of shipping containers across the street from my church. My goal is to raise $35 million, and we've raised an astonishing $20 million in just 10 months so far. On October 29th, we will break ground and begin to make our vision a reality. I've reached out to our governor and mayor to invite them to join our efforts. Silence thus far. I'm not surprised by that. After all, this is why my community decided a long while back to take matters into our own hands. We will be the ones that bring down the violence, that change the culture from bad faith to good faith, and we will make the South Sides thrive again. I recently saw a tweet quoting a lesson from the ancient Midrash that describes our leaders so effectively. He who is compassionate to the cruel will ultimately become cruel to the compassionate. As American citizens, we must place our compassion in the right place, and it is only then that the true and lasting change will be begun. So if you ask me about the Safety Act in our neighborhood, please know you're not speaking for all of us.
Q&A after that, but we are going to have Q&A. Bat and JP, and you'll see some of our people. Just raise your hand, and they'll come along and collect them up. But at this time, while they're collecting up your questions, I would like to ask anybody who is an active duty public safety officer, wants to share something, has a question for this panel, or any mayor who is an elected mayor right now wants to come up and have a question that maybe wasn't answered. We would like to hear from you as these questions come up. Oh, we've got Mayor Pisek from Lisle. Here you go, Chris.
Thank you. I'd just like to share a quick story. Back in if my memory serves me correctly, back in January of 2021, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot made headlines when she called together all the Chicagoland mayors for a teleconference summit, trying to figure out how the local municipalities, the outlying municipalities, were going to help fix Chicago's crime problem. I took an opportunity in that call to ask a couple questions of Mayor Lightfoot. One was, when was she going to get our students back into school? Second question was, what was her thoughts on House Bill 3653? Her response to that second question was, what is House Bill 3653? I explained it was the Police Reform Act, better known as the Safety Act, and her further response was, oh, that sausage legislation? I don't think anybody had an opportunity to read that. So that said, when House Bill 3653 was on Governor Pritzker's desk awaiting his signature, I put a resolution forward before the Village of Lisle board, and I want everybody to kind of make a mental note of an email address, electedofficials@villageoflisle.org. That's no spaces in that, electedofficials@villageoflisle.org. I put a resolution forward asking Governor Pritzker to veto House Bill 3653, the Safety Act. Much like Sheriff Mendrick experienced, my resolution was tabled indefinitely, and with board members refusing to discuss it. My response was, no problem, I will write a letter from the office of the mayor to the governor asking him to veto the bill. And I further offered to the public or anybody else that supported my letter that I would add their name to it. So my letter went out to the governor with about 40 or 50 members of the public's name added to it. In the meantime, 3 trustees came to their senses and brought the resolution back off the table for discussion, and it ended up passing. So not only did the governor get a letter from the mayor, but he ended up getting a resolution from the Village of Lisle. So remember, elected officials at villageoflisle.org, everybody that lives in Lisle, travels through Lisle, dines in Lisle, shops in Lisle, owns property in Lisle, has nexus to Lisle. So I want to hear from everybody, as I also think all the elected officials of Lisle should. Fast forward about 9 weeks ago, I brought another resolution forward asking all the state legislators and the governor to either revise, delay until it's revised, or if it can't be revised, revoke the Pretrial Fairness Act. That resolution met the same response from a majority of the trustees, and they refused to pass it. So again, a letter from the mayor to every legislator in the state of Illinois, as well as the governor, came from my office with about 50 resident signatures added to that letter. The village board had an opportunity to reconsider their denial of the resolution. That came and passed at the last village board meeting. This coming Monday, we have another village board meeting. It'd be great if anybody that feels strongly about public safety, their safety, and the services that we provide in the village of Lisle to everybody that has nexus to Lisle, that passes through Lisle, shops in Lisle, has any kind of connection to Lisle, please reach out to elected officials at villageoflisle.org. And after you've done that, feel free to reach out to your local legislators in your own communities, and let's add all these to the growing list of communities that oppose the implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you for your leadership on that, Mayor. I really appreciate it. I will say this. It is important to contact your legislators. They're the ones who passed it. They're the ones who passed it in the dark of the night. They're the ones responsible, along with the executive who signed it. Okay, can you bring the questions up to me? If you bring them up to me, that'd be great. I do have one in my hand that a gentleman handed to me. What role did the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board have to participate in the passing of the Safety Act? Were they silent? He actually says, why were they silent? So he must know something. Did they fail to address the issues that the Safety Act attempts to resolve? It does appear that a number of important stakeholders, people who actually know what's going on, were not at the table when this passed. Can somebody comment on that from the panel?
What I can tell you is that there was discussion of police licensing, and that was a separate bill. And in the police licensing provision, there were numerous meetings that state's attorneys, the police chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, ILETSB, all participated in. And we actually shared language. This was, Attorney General Raul led this. We participated in 6 months of meetings to come up with language that ultimately all of those groups signed off on, including the Illinois FOP. And then what happened is 2 days before the end of the session, they took that licensing bill and they threw it into the Safety Act and made it all one big bill. So none of those agencies had any participation in the Pretrial Fairness Act, but just that licensing portion, they did have a lot of say, actually.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on it? No? Okay. This is kind of a little bit of a common question. It is, how much will this loss of cash bonds affect financing of the courts in DuPage County? What costs will be borne by the taxpayers? And an additional sort of similar one, is it true stripping bail will increase property taxes? Anybody want to tackle that one?
Yeah. So there was a presentation done a little over a year ago at the county board where it was Sheriff Mendrick, the public defender, state's attorney, myself, circuit court clerk, probation, and the judiciary all gave presentations on how much they estimated this act was going to cost taxpayers. It's $62 million over 5 years. That includes additional headcount. It includes building this new detention courtroom, remodeling our office, moving the public defender's office. It includes the loss of restitution to victims, all kinds of costs, and it was all unfunded So yes, this is all on the backs of taxpayers. In regards to property taxes, look, what makes your property worth what it's worth? Again, good schools, safe communities. When we start to lose those, you see property values start to go down.
If I can just say, as far as Will County goes, we just had a meeting. We've had numerous meetings as judges, administrators, elected officials from the on the county level, as well as the legislators. And I will say this, many of them voted for this act and now want to sit at the table and talk to us about it. But the main thing that came through loud and clear financially and from an administrative side of this was it is going to cost Will County about $10 to $12 million per year, and that's just in revenue. That has nothing to do with the extended amount of salaries or the things that are going to have to be included. As far as, I think someone said this before, we are basically adding about 115 new court dates a year, which includes, when you think about it, judges, we're on a salary. We get paid the same whether we come, go, whatever. That being said, the sheriff, the state's attorney, the public defender, the clerk's office, the court reporters, the court security, there are so many layers of individuals that now will be required to have full court days on Saturdays and Sundays. We do it, we're fortunate to have the ability to do it in Will and DuPage counties. I think most of the collar counties now have 7 days a week. We see people every day of the week. That being said, what this act will do will add basically full proceedings to every day of the week. And so when you multiply that, I can't even imagine what the real number is.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go right to this because I think this is actually one of the more important questions. They say that judges will be able to determine if there's cash bail. Is that right? Can a judge determine that there's cash bail in every one of these criminal charges? I think this is going to the non-detainable offense issue.
So after January 1st, there is no more cash bail. It's eliminated. So a judge has two choices, detention or no detention. Or actually three choices, because you can release with conditions. But there are many offenses which are truly non-detainable. So they have to be released. And some offenses, the ones I went through earlier, where the only way they can be detained is if they are a willful flight risk. So a limited number of offenses where their risk to a person or person can be considered.
Okay. Multiple questions on trespassing. I'll put these together to Sheriff Mendrick. If we post no trespassing signs on our property, does that change anything? Okay. If a municipality has home rule, can they pass an ordinance that says trespassing is a misdemeanor? Then can the trespasser be removed or arrested if they're on your property? And then how will this affect evictions for renters? So it's kind of the same sort of squatter issue, I guess.
Yeah, so that is going to be, I think, the biggest problem is trespass. You know, criminal damage of property, telephone harassment, internet harassment, all fall in the same category. So all of those, if somebody breaks something of yours, it's going to be the same issue. So no, there's really not a way to skirt around it. You know, they built in another thing into the Safety Act that says that you can't construct some other law and refer to it to defeat the base law of not issuing a citation. So they actually thought of us trying to be creative and working around these things and you know, kind of sealed that crack too. Evictions, I thought about that too. That'll be interesting. Same thing with rental properties. If somebody, you know, breaks into a vacant rental property and squats, that's a ticket. It's criminal damage of property if you break the door, and it's trespass if you're inside. There's two tickets in that from how they wrote the Safety Act. So I think things like evictions and real estate that's vacant will be a problem. See, what you have to realize, like I said, what could possibly go wrong? They do all this in winter, and when we can't arrest for trespass, you know, human organisms are going to go to where it's warm. They're just going to. And when you displace a criminal population and put them into homelessness, and this will probably impact the residents of Wheaton more than we don't take our detainees back to Naperville or Edison or Bartlett. We just don't have the means to do that. So they get released into Wheaton. So every day, if there's 8 or 12 people that don't qualify to come in, because that's around where our average would be 16, I figure some of them will keep. If I'm letting 8 people, say like go 8 people a day, they're going to go into the streets of Wheaton, 8 people a day. And again, these are going to be people who came in 80% with some type of addiction, and we're going to be releasing them when they're what they call jonesing. They've lost their high, and they're going to be looking to get high again, and we're going to be homeless just a short enough duration to make them really want their drugs again. So they're going to be released into an area of the county complex, right by County Farm and Roosevelt Road, and they will gravitate from there. Another aspect to this, my wife Cindy is here. She's a behavioral health nurse at Good Samaritan Hospital. We've already talked about the impact that this is going to have. Like I said, they took away mental health institutions, right? And then it became our bane to take that on, which we did, and we did very well. I believe we cracked that nut. We created a robust continuum of care that really worked. But now when somebody cuts a wrist and they commit a crime that I can't hold them for, they're going to go to local hospital systems. Right by us is CDH. They'll be affected first, but this will fill up all you're going to have a lot of beds. It's going to be kind of like a potential COVID type of issue where beds start getting filled and they have to expand their mental health services because these people have to go somewhere. You just can't get rid of the people with mental health and commit a criminal act. You can't make them disappear. They have to go somewhere.
Good point. Okay, if someone tried to kidnap a child, would they be let out now?
No, so...
Not now. How about afterwards?
No.
What happens?
What you have to pair apart is what I'm talking about where you can't be arrested are B and C misdemeanors, which those are the lower qualified crimes that we consider routine every day. For kidnapping, or if somebody tries to break in your house with you in it, home invasion, or to break in it to steal something, burglary, we'll still be able to we'll be able to arrest on that, but now that process is to bring them back for their bond hearing and let them go again unless they're a specific named threat to a person like what these gentlemen were talking about. So basically, it's we have leave them with the citation or probably what's going to be considered kind of a catch and release scenario.
Okay. What new restrictions and liabilities on police officers will there be? How will this affect how they do their jobs?
Well, the anonymous complaints are bad. That's really causing a morale issue where we're at. Even when people say, oh, there's some good things in the Safety Act. Well, yeah, I mean, Chicago was so far behind. There were some good things for Chicago. Take mental health training, this crisis intervention team training. We're training the trainers on it. We've trained almost 1,000 cops since probably over the last 7 years. And I have 400 people with stars on their chests. I have 500 employees. In my term, since I've been elected, I have not had one use of force complaint against one deputy. Not one. So yeah, that's great that they're going to have us do mental health training in the academy, and I got to pay more for it and all that. Yeah, well, guess what? Even when they do something good, they don't understand. They're so far behind us, they're doing half measures. Half of the CIT class will be trained in the academy. I get to pay for that. Then when they get out, I'm not going to lower my standards because they wanted a lower standard. Now I got to train them with the full boat of the CIT when they get out, so I have to do a class and a half, one redundant. So even the good things, we're so far ahead of Cook County and the people who made this law, they didn't realize we were already where they hoped to be. We're there. They didn't realize that, and they made a Cook County law that applies to 102 counties in a state where the problem is just to the east of us.
Good point. Matt?
And the question also touched on what new restrictions will there be on law enforcement officers. I'd like to point out 2 things that are stripped away. One is that previously you could not make an anonymous complaint against a law enforcement officer for a state-level decertification process. We dug into the bill and wrote about this today and a few other things at Wirepoints. Now you can. In fact, it has to be an anonymous complaint. Accountability should be a two-way street. Similarly, for local complaints of misconduct against police, complaints to a local police department, such as are made often in the city of Chicago and certainly in other jurisdictions, It used to be under state law until the passage of this bill that a sworn affidavit was required. No biggie, you know, if you've got some serious beef, put your name to it. Yeah, exactly, notarized. There was also a related provision that if you were found later to have essentially given false testimony, that you could be prosecuted for that. That's gone now too. So this stuff really amounts to serious ill will, in my opinion. You know whose side they're on and who they're against. So I see a real problem with this. And if I could, Jeannie, I had kind of a related question. And Sheriff Mendrick, I wanted to direct this to you and possibly to State's Attorney Berlin. State Representative Sean Ford was, of course, one of the members of the House caucus who jammed this thing through. And recently, this is according to Rich Miller, a well-known pamphleteer from Springfield, at a public meeting in Forest Park, and according to the Forest Park Review, Representative LaShawn Ford said, of the cash bail provision of the Safety Act, if we didn't pass something, we wouldn't have gotten anything from law enforcement. You wouldn't have gotten a serious conversation. Is that true? And can you really get granular on this as far as what you know from the State Sheriff's Association? Was there back and forth? Did you guys stiff arm them? What really happened? Is he telling the truth or not?
So that's a great question because, you know, obviously when I got tabled indefinitely, I was out fishing trying to get somebody to listen to what the implication of all this is. So some of my staff met with LG Sims and the gentleman's name was Slaughter, was his last name, Justin Slaughter. And when we told him, I went through the whole thing of what we're doing with rehabilitation and detoxing in the jails, and they didn't look like they liked the conversation. They really didn't like the fact they placated me very well and said, "Oh my God, we can't hurt rehabilitative services. We can't hurt mental health. We'll get back to you." And that was absolutely the last I ever heard from them. Then no calls get returned. They do it without you. But they knew exactly. I went, just what I told you, I went in greater detail to tell them, hey, continuum of care, all these people come in on substance. We do all these different treatment programs, their recidivism rates, all that. I went through it all. They heard it all. Before anything was decided, they discarded all that information, and I was never included in one process since.
And Bob, any inside information or observations on whether law enforcement stiff-armed the House Democratic Caucus on this? Is LaShawn Ford telling us the story straight or not so much?
So as I said earlier, for the police licensing, which was a separate bill, we had 6 months of meetings. The police, the sheriffs, state's attorneys, probation, let's be. Everyone was at the table. We shared language back and forth. We made changes. That's the way legislation is supposed to be drafted, right? We had absolutely nothing to do with the rest of that bill in the Safety Act. We were never asked to be at the table. Now, we're at the table now. In the past 2 weeks, we started having meetings to discuss language to fix that bill. And the same parties are there. The police chiefs are there, the Sheriff's Association, the state's attorneys, the public defenders are there. And we're doing now what we should have done before this law was passed. None of us are opposed to reforms that make sense. But when we have major criminal justice reform, every single agency that's involved should have a seat at the table. That didn't happen.
In that regard, there's probably 3 or 4 questions that all talk about what can people do to make sure that this bill doesn't go forward as it is, that there's something done. Who do they contact? Where's the pressure points? What do they do? What happens if these same people who voted for this get reelected? Do they feel like the voting public didn't really care then? This wasn't their issue? So people, there's multiple questions again about how do they get involved, how they make something happen here.
You know, real quick, I'll start off. You know, I've been saying this because I've been doing a lot of these talks. And again, I'm doing this because I'm a Woodridge resident. I'm really worried about what's going on here. But like I said in the beginning, that you guys are my boss. You know, you're all their bosses too. You are. No one is an elected official likes to get messages, phone calls, emails, letters, all this stuff saying how horrible they think you're doing your job. No one likes that. And I'm telling you, we all have egos. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So every letter, every phone call, every email, I remember when we were getting those 20,000 witness slips when this was still, I think, called House Bill 163. That drove them nuts enough to change a House bill actual number from 163 to 3653 at 3:35 in the morning and pretend, hey, there were no witness slips on that. There were 20,000. That's what gets to them, is your involvement. You're calling them. You're putting the spotlight on. They hate it. They absolutely hate it. So the more you call your county board members, your senators, your state reps, your governor, fill up their mailboxes, fill up their voicemails, let them know what you think. If you know, the only reason that we're getting a seat at the table is because all of you guys are now making a fuss. If you weren't here, 500 of you weren't here, and we've been doing these almost every day. There's these big crowds at almost all these now. The people are waking up. You are waking up. This is how we're going to do it.
Let me just add on to that. I mean, there are a number of lawsuits that have been filed. I think we're up to 50 now that state's attorneys around the state have filed challenging the constitutionality of the law. That's going to take time to wind its way through the courts. But as I said earlier, we're having meetings. We have a seat at the table discussing language to fix the law, and it is fixable. So please contact your state reps, your state senators, and urge them to fix the law because it can be done. And there is no question, I agree with the sheriff, they are feeling the pressure of the public. And they should. They should be feeling the pressure from the public. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Okay, because I actually like to finish my work. I get to sometimes I do, at least now. I'm just going to have a couple other real quick ones here. Do you believe the Safety Act will lead prosecutors to overcharge defendants so they can be held on bond?
The answer to that is no.
Right.
You know what, we follow the American Bar Association standards when it comes to charging. Do we have a reasonable probability of obtaining a conviction based on admissible evidence? That will not change. We do things by the book. We are ethical. We're bound by certain rules, and we follow them, because when we don't, the entire system falls apart.
Yes, it is.
Right. Okay, they want, Berlin, they'd like you to inform the public. Would you create and post on your website bond hearing results listing the defendant, the charge, and the bail amount, and the judge presiding over the hearing? And Judge Carlson, would you support this? And essentially, they're looking for transparency, I guess, on what goes on in bond court so they can follow this. There's another question that deals with how do we know whether or not we should retain judges? People have already voted. They know that the judge retention's on there. I mean, you kind of work in a vacuum, which, you know, if the public wants to know more. I know these, I'm just throwing these out there. I don't know that you can answer them.
Well,
but
try
I just want you to
judges.
know that people are curious about information now, and I think it's because people are waking up to what's happening, so I appreciate that.
I'll start with the judges thing. I've always said, the way Illinois is set up, the judicial elections, it's kind of obviously very typical Illinois, and it always makes me laugh because they tell us we can't be political, but it's purely political. In order for me to be elected as a circuit judge in the state of Illinois, I have to be a member of a political party. You run in a primary, you get put on the ballot, and then they tell you, okay, forget all that. You can't do it. And then when you go for retention 6 years later, they say, it's nonpartisan. That being said, I think it's absolutely imperative that you pay attention to the judges. You know, I said that before about the whole idea that we're kind of like the Holy Spirit, that we're out there. I tell people all the time, when I ran for judge, and even now, pay attention to who your judges are, because these are the people, whether it deals with property taxes, whether it deals with criminal activity, whatever it is, your judges are on the front line. State's Attorney Berlin, the sheriff, they can only do so much. It's the judge who makes that ultimate decision. And please, please, please pay attention. Those of us that are here, that's why I'm here, quite frankly. I want you to be able to ask us questions. Now, we can't answer every question, but you have an absolute right to know who your judges are. You should know who your judges are. You should pay attention. And as it relates to the idea of how we find out about who the judges are regarding bond, well, everything that goes on in court is open. You can come in, first of all, I believe that, I think, Bob, you remember when there used to be a lot of court watchers, people would come in, sit in court and say, hey, this judge does this judge does that, the state's attorney does this, they drop these kind of cases, the judge finds these people not guilty. That doesn't happen anymore. I think part of it is because of the ridiculousness of Judge Judy and all this other stuff that people think are, you know, that's the face of the judiciary. I gotta tell you, it makes me sick. Come in, see what we do. Also, pay attention. Follow, when I said this before about everything is public. You can go on the circuit court. I know you can go on the Will County Circuit Court Clerk's website. You can get access to the court files. I know you can do it in DuPage County. You can find out right now what happened in the bond court today. You can find out who the judge was. You can find out who the defendant was. You can find out who how much the bond is, if they're in the jail. I think, Sheriff, you probably have it on your website. Yep. So there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it, and I encourage you to do it. Ask those questions. Make us responsible to you. That in and of itself, it's amazing what eyes do on a system. You know, who do we trust, you or the legislature? I mean, that's really what it comes down to when we talk about criminal justice reform. Pay attention to what's going on, and you'll see that the vast majority of us, and I think we sit up here now, you know, I'm getting long-winded about this because I'm fairly passionate about it. We don't do this because we like the title. We don't do it because, you know, that wears off after about day 3. We do it because we believe in it. I can honestly say that as I sit here, and I think Bob just said it about how he prosecutes cases, the sheriff does it, I think anybody who is elected to these positions truly believes in what we do. I don't sleep at night because I think, oh, what is the political ramification of finding this person guilty or not guilty? I sleep at night because I take the facts, I look at the law, and I say, hey, this is what happened. I'm not judging people as a human being. I'm judging them on their actions as it relates to the law. And I think that's what we, and I'm speaking for the 3 of us at least, I think that's what we do. And I'm proud of it. I think these guys are proud of it. And I think that you guys, we owe it to you to be in that position and to do it the way we do it. So please, find us. Look for us. Ask questions. So, sorry.
Okay. Matt, did you want to say something?
Gene, yes, I have a follow-up comment and question, and Judge, I'd be interested to hear your response to this. I agree that making bond court proceedings available online is commendable, and also that making actual case outcomes, sentences, which is the real enchilada here, in the end, that making that information available on site in the courthouse building is commendable. And I think that all counties do that. And in Cook County, we benefit greatly from a site that many of you know that is camped out in the courthouse called CWB Chicago. Yep. They're rock stars, and there should be one such site in every county. In fact, to the people asking, what can I do? Start a CWB DuPage and go down there and do that in every collar county and in every county. They're camped out there, and they're privately funded, part of this nonprofit media infrastructure, which, yes, Wirepoints is part of, and you should give us money, by the way. It's tax deductible. But here's my question. I notice, and this is in an article we wrote earlier this year, the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County's website spells it out. The case data available online is the electronic docket, which contains only brief summaries of court documents and court events in a particular case. Currently, the Illinois Supreme Court's electronic access policy for circuit court records of the Illinois courts, italics, prohibits remote access to actual case documents. Therefore, when we vote for judges, we don't know what the hell we're doing. We can't see their records. Anyone who believes in open government, in online transparency, and I started working in this area long ago when I started my own 501c3 called Public Data Ferret, and that's really kind of what we do at Wirepoints, is ferret out public data. Knows that judicial data and actual case outcomes, especially in this age of decriminalizing criminal activity, that this is utterly vital. So why do not public officials pressure somehow lawmakers or go into court to give us the transparency we need online? Because face it, nobody is going to camp out at the courtroom most of the time. That's utterly archaic.
All right.
So, Judge,
Yeah.
I'm interested on how we engineer change around that and if that's something that ought to be pursued.
I will speak solely as in my administrative role as the chief or the presiding judge of the criminal division. I think a lot of it has to do with business. The state of Illinois has made certain deals with certain companies to electronically store court records. I don't know the full extent of it. That would be my guess as to why there are certain things that are freely accessible and certain things that they probably want to make money from. That would be my take on it.
Sounds plausible to me, yeah.
Yes, I'll leave it at that because I really don't have any other answers other than that.
Okay, speaking of CWB Chicago, it is a great site. I go there every time that I want some crime information. And they just posted this October 5th. This is number 44. Number 44. This is felons released that go out and reoffend. Here's the story. A Chicago man shot and killed 2 men during a party last week while on bond for attempted murder and on probation for a felony narcotics case. Prosecutors said Wednesday. Absalom Coakley was also allegedly carrying a handgun when police arrested him this week in River North. He's the 44th person accused of killing or shooting or attempting to kill or shoot someone in Chicago while awaiting trial for a felony this year. The alleged crimes involved at least 82 victims, 21 of whom died. So not incarcerating people who are being accused and actually have already been convicted of serious crimes and then reoffend, not keeping them incarcerated has real life-altering events, especially if you're the 21 who died. So, Pastor Brooks, we're going to leave it up to you. Last question here. Will this act increase rehabilitation if the criminals are released? What is your opinion?
Well, I can just say that we're going to continue to try to rehabilitate as many criminals as we possibly can because that's the thing that makes our community safe. But I also believe that we're going to have a lot more crime in the city of Chicago And what we've seen thus far is nothing compared to what we're going to see if this bill is not changed. And I want to go back and close just on something that was said earlier on what you can do. You don't have to wait for these court processes to take place and these legal actions to take place. There's an election coming up. And you have an opportunity to take your feelings out on the person who signed the bill. And that's something you can do immediately. And so I want to encourage everyone, because again, I can be political. I want to encourage you to do that, to go to the polls, to cast your vote, because as they have said, they do work for us, and so we need to let that be known.
Okay, and Pastor Brooks, if they want to donate to your worthy cause, they can go to what website?
You can go to projecthood.org. We've already raised $20 million since November 20th of 2021, which is about 11 months. Our goal is to raise $35 million. We're breaking ground on October 29th. So we're $15 million from being able to pay for a building debt-free in Chicago. So if you have a $15 million check, I can go to your house tonight and I can skip the roof and stay at your home and breakfast and everything. So, yeah. But
Okay, so
projecthood.org, and we have some information. I think we brought Brian, we have some information over to the left if you want to see the center that we're building and any other information, but projecthood.org is the website.
Great. Well, I want to thank our panelists for coming with a big round of applause. I want to thank all of you for the work that you do. It's invaluable. It's work that most of us are not willing to do. We really appreciate the work that you do. I want to thank my staff, Babette and JP and Larissa, and I want to thank all the other assistants that came by to pitch in, and there's too many to name, but I'm just looking, Kelly and Tracy and the Smiths, Chuck and Paula, and who else am I missing? Chris Ward and then everybody else who came. And I do not want to be accused of bribing a judge or a panelist, but I brought them a little bag of chocolate. So thank you all. Thank you for attending. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.